Along that east coast, we do have that low cloud in places. That's going to limit the temperature rise a bit more during the morning. It will tend to become more restricted to the far east coast around the beaches by the afternoon. But here it's going to be cooler because of this breeze from the North Sea. So not as hot across East Anglia and the southeast compared with the last few heat waves, but inland and widely across central and western England, Wales, parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland, temperatures reaching or exceeding 30 Celsius. Top temperature 34 degrees somewhere in the West Midlands. Now, Sunday is also going to be a hot day, but a couple of differences. A bit more cloud in the sky, chance of an odd shower later, temperatures a couple of degrees down on Saturdays. Then a real change takes place into the start of next week, showery and much cooler.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The 12th, a day to celebrate history, community and family here in Northern Ireland. Join me, Arlene Foster.
And me, Dougie Beattie, as we bring you live coverage of the July 12th celebrations.
Right across the United Kingdom. It's all happening here on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
He's not just a presenter, he's an award-winning television icon. A household name for decades, from GMTV to This Morning, and now waking up Britain on GB News Breakfast. Join Eamon Holmes, TV royalty and multiple Trick Award winner, as we bring you the news that matters. This isn't just breakfast TV, this is GB News Breakfast. Every morning from 6 a.m. on GB News.
To all of you who voted for GB News to win at the Trick Awards for the third year in a row.
So thank you so much for voting for us.
First, and hopefully there'll be a few more to come down the line.
Hey, thank you, thank you, thank you.
It's because of you that we're proud to be the People's Channel. It's because of you that we are Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
Oh no, you didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Imagine having an extra £1,000 to spend each week for an entire year. £54,321 in tax-free cash could be yours. Cash to spend however you like. £54,321 in cash could be landing in your bank account this year. For another chance to win £54,321 cash, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB14 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 1st of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country. There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor. Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster, the ultimate clique.
And you're fighting like rats in a sack.
But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask.
OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician.
Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless.
But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome to a brand new Friday night with me, Matt Goodwin, where we speak up for you, the forgotten majority. Coming up on tonight's show. Prime Minister Keir Starmer has struck a one-in, one-out migration deal with France's Emmanuel Macron in what I believe is the ultimate gimmick. We're going to be debating that tonight. Angela Rayner has backed down on secretive plans for a new Islamophobia definition after pressure from free speech campaigners. We're going to be debating why this threatens free speech. Britain's economy has just shrunk by another 0.1% last month. It's not going well, is it, Rachel? As the heat wave is blamed for dwindling growth as small businesses, already crippled by tax rises, continue to struggle. And in Matt in Conversation tonight, a new segment in our show, I'm going to be speaking to a top Republican strategist about how Trump 2 is going, including the recent decision not to give Trump an address in Parliament during his upcoming state visit. We'll be going stateside to debate all of that tonight. And that's Friday Night with Matt Goodwin starts right now. Now, I'll also be joined tonight by my panel, assistant comment editor at The Telegraph, Poppy Coburn, and trade unionist Andy Twelves. But as ever, I want to know your views tonight. You can reach us at gbnews.com/your say. Of course, you can reach me on X and Facebook and everywhere else, and at GB News. But now it's time for the News Bulletin with Sophia Hill.
Matt, thank you. A very good evening. Your headlines at 8 o'clock. This evening, we've learnt that the former Metropolitan Police Commissioner, Lord Ian Blair, has died at the age of 72. The crossbench peer and senior police officer led the UK's largest force between 2005 and 2008. Lord Blair was appointed commissioner just months before the deadly 7/7 suicide bomb attacks that killed 52 people on London's transport network. Stepping down 3 years later, he called it the proudest task of my life to lead the men and women of the Metropolitan Police. The Home Secretary says Britain's new migrant returns deal with France is robust and ready to face down any legal challenge. Sir Keir Starmer's struck a one-in, one-out agreement with President Macron to stop the small boats, though it does still need the green light from Brussels. France's leader has blamed Brexit for fueling the crisis, but the UK insists the new plan will work, with migrants arriving illegally set to be detained upon arrival. Border Force and the RNLI were back in the Channel this morning as the first boatload reached over. However, Tory leader Kemi Badenoch doubts the practicality of the deal.
The deal that Keir Starmer has signed with Macron is not a deterrent. It doesn't do anything to reduce immigration, and one in, one out also means that as we're taking people, if the asylum seekers who go back to France get there, they can come back again. So we could have the same person going back and forth while we're receiving other people on France's behalf. Emmanuel Macron is working very much in the French national interest. We need our Prime Minister to work in the British national interest.
Turning stateside, US President Donald Trump is visiting Texas after the area was hit by the deadly floods last week. President Trump, First Lady Melania Trump and the Texas Governor Greg Abbott have all met with first responders as they visited a scene of devastation. Torrential rains last week sent water surging down the Guadalupe River, killing dozens. Thousands of responders have spent days combing the debris, but no one has been found alive since the day of the floods. And an amber heat alerts are in force across much of England as the third summer heatwave pushes temperatures above 34 degrees. Hosepipe bans are now in place in Yorkshire and Sussex, with health chiefs warning of risks to the elderly and the vulnerable. At London Zoo, however, some penguin chicks have found their own way to cool off, taking their first dip in the main pool as mercury hit 31 degrees in Regent's Park today. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. More from me in an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Welcome back to Friday Night with me, Matt Goodwin. Wow, this Labour government has just let down the British people all over again. Prime Minister Keir Starmer has struck a one-in, one-out, shake-it-all-about migration deal, or you might call it an exchange programme for illegal migrants, with France's Emmanuel Macron in what I think is the ultimate gimmick. Just last year, Labour slammed the Conservative Party, remember, for the Rwanda scheme, which they called a gimmick.
The Rwanda scheme was dead and buried before it started. It's never been a deterrent. And I'm not prepared to continue with gimmicks that don't act as a deterrent.
But now Labour's come up with the ultimate gimmick. And this deal makes a mockery of what the British people really want. We don't want one in, one out. We want none in and all of the illegal migrants out. We want the estimated 1.2 million illegal migrants who are currently living in Britain removed from Britain. And we want our culture, our way of life to be protected, to be promoted, and not to be continuously eroded by uncontrolled mass migration. Keir Starmer's spokesperson has insisted that the migrant agreement with Macron will be more successful than the Conservative Party's Rwanda scheme. But let's not forget that the Rwanda scheme only resulted in 4 migrants being deported, and they left voluntarily. So the bar is already extremely low. Tackling illegal migration is crucial for both the UK and France as more migrants flood into Europe from overseas. But Labour Home Secretary Yvette Cooper said today that they have not even figured out how many migrants are going to be returned. Watch this.
The whole purpose of what we're doing is to bring down these dangerous boat crossings because we think no one should be making those boat crossings. What we did say, what the Prime Minister said yesterday, is there's no single silver bullet, whether it's about this new returns agreement, which frankly I think is the right thing to do, or any of the other measures that we're talking about. We've seen 6 years of people claiming that one single thing, particularly the previous government claiming one single thing, or opposition parties claiming one single thing is going to solve it. What we need is a comprehensive approach that looks across the board.
A comprehensive approach. I mean, this is completely bananas. The stark reality is that it's estimated only 50 illegal migrants will be returned to France each week. That is 1.5% of the total number who have arrived on the small boats since this crisis began. 1.5%. I struggle to grasp how 50 illegal migrants a week are going to make a dent in this crisis when hundreds are arriving every day. You know, I didn't think Keir Starmer could make a worse deal than the Chagos deal, but this returns deal could actually become a major pull factor to the UK for thousands more asylum seekers, as Britain will now have to accept some of them who make it to France. Asylum seekers will be able to apply online to be relocated. This includes those with family connections in the UK and those who are most likely to be exploited by people smugglers. And during a press conference this week, Sir Keir defended letting migrants in. Here's what he said. "We accept genuine asylum seekers because it is right that we offer a haven to those who are most in need. We simply cannot solve a challenge like stopping the boats by acting alone and telling our allies that we won't play ball." All while it's been revealed exclusively today by GB News that private companies, get this, have secured over £5 billion in UK government contracts to provide border security services. The average contracts in terms of value are £27 million, costing the UK taxpayer 73 quid per person to cover everything from drones in the Channel to marquees at processing centres. The National Audit Office has separately estimated that this border crisis in terms of accommodation costs could cost $15 billion over the next 10 years. The deal is already seeing a backlash, including, by the way, among the French, as both the head of the Northern France region and the Mayor of Calais today have come out, unsurprisingly, and said that this deal, agreed by Keir Starmer, will only draw more migrants to the Channel coast. And the French are saying what is obvious. Keir Starmer's dodgy deal on the small boats crisis will only lead to a surge of yet more migration as the prospect of asylum in the UK is now put on the table. I don't know about you, but I don't want an exchange programme for illegal migrants who break our laws. I don't want another country having control over who comes in and out of our own country. I want secure borders now. We need to leave the European Convention on Human Rights. We need to reform the Human Rights Act. We need to start making serious strides towards delivering the real change that the hard-working, tax-paying British majority both deserve and need. Well, to debate this now tonight is former editor at Labour List, Peter Edwards. Peter, I put it to you, this deal between Keir Starmer and Emmanuel Macron, if you want to call it that, is probably the biggest gimmick we've ever seen in British politics, is it not?
Good evening. Well, I think you're living in a reform-led dystopia, really, and I want to kind of bring you back to reality. You know, the number of migrants forcibly removed to Rwanda was 0. The number of returns deals agreed by the previous 5 Tory prime ministers was 0. The number of policy papers produced by Reform to tackle this was 0. And Nigel Farage said this week he hadn't had time to do it. Reform's #1 issue, small boats, Farage said he hadn't got time to prepare a policy to publish on this. There is a deal, there was none before.
Peter, you're very good on numbers, so please answer this simple question. How many illegal migrants will be removed from the UK to France through this deal?
Well, I think, Matt, you can answer that because clearly someone in the Home Office has briefed out that a pilot, and everyone understands, you're a very intelligent chap, Matt, you know what a pilot is. You mean you start small and scale it up. Pilot scheme, 50 a week. 50 is more than 0, and you well understand what a pilot scheme. If it works, it'll be expanded.
I've got another number for you, Peter, 170,000. 170,000 people who have broken our laws by entering our country. That's more people than we've got in the British Army, Peter.
Yes, so that's since about 2016, I think, so 9 to 10 years.
2018.
That number is correct. And, you know, it goes back, remember those 5 Tory prime ministers? I haven't got time to list them all or the interview would end, but they all agreed no deals with France. Liz Truss couldn't even work out if
Peter,
France was a friend or a foe.
I'm the last person in Westminster to defend the Tories on immigration. I'm with you on that. They made a complete mess of it. But let me just give you another number. £7 to £10 billion. That's what this is costing the British people every year, this crisis. So as Labour have announced this deal, within hours, we've got the head of the northern region of France, we've got the mayor of Calais saying the only thing this deal will do is create a major pull factor for more migrants across the Middle East and Northern Africa to head into Calais because of the prospects of applying for asylum. You've just created another major pull factor that's going to pour gasoline over this migration crisis.
Well, Matt, I haven't poured gasoline over anyone, and I think that's a bit of a lurid metaphor to use. But actually,
that's what's happening to the country, Peter.
Well,
it's like a tinderbox.
I don't think it is. And by the way, I have lived in the north of England before you say you're a London-based Liberal. But let's come back to the facts at heart of it, because I read some of those interviews with French regional politicians today as well. And the primary reason they were down about the deals because they felt it's too much in Britain's favour. So that would appear to pull the rug from underneath you.
So, Peter, why should the French have any say over our migration policy? Why should the French be deciding who can come to the UK and who should not? We're a sovereign, self-governing, independent nation. I don't understand why Labour are always so quick to sign off powers over our own country to other nations. We saw it with Chagos.
Matt,
we saw it with Keir Starmer's EU
deal.
We saw it with the India trade deal, and now we see it with this. Why doesn't the Labour Party actually believe in Britain and believe in the capacity of our own people and our own politicians to solve our own problems?
Well, I think, Matt, you're interviewing yourself. But Britain could live in glorious isolation, just as Liz Truss
envisaged. Peter. I just want control
Matt,
borders.
You're interviewing yourself. We could live in glorious isolation, or we could do deals. It's a problem that embraces the whole of Europe, if not much of the Western world. As we all know, there's an enormous channel between us and France. The idea with all that water, we can solve this on our own, is la-la land. Of course we need to do a deal in France. Do we do a deal in France and try and get the best outcome for Britain, or do we just be rude to France, as Liz Truss was, and persist in glorious isolation with the numbers going up and up and up? There'll be criticism in the Daily Mail and the Daily Express over the deal, but the only outcome worse than do a deal is doing nothing. Doing nothing. And people die in the water. They're dying every week, Matt.
Peter, they're dying because we have one government after another that refuses to do what they need to do to solve this crisis. You've just said...
What's your suggestion, then?
I'm about to give it to you right now. You have just said that the people who are complaining about this crisis, myself included, Nigel Farage, a Reform Party, don't put forward any suggestions. Here is one for you. A very simple, clear idea. We could do it almost immediately, and it would give us much greater control, not only over the borders, but over our ability to deport foreign criminals. Are you ready for this, Peter? Let's leave the European Convention on Human Rights.
Exactly. So not an original thought, and not one that is popular either. No party in the last 30 years has got within a sniff of winning a general election on the basis of pulling out of the ECHR. So, you know, you're absolutely entitled to critique the deal, and you're absolutely entitled to...
Why don't you think we should leave the ECHR? Answer the question.
Because I think that would put us in the same bracket as places like Zimbabwe and Iran. And secondly,
every other Anglophone nation across the world that is not a member of the ECHR.
There is no mandate for it. If you want to get into bed with Iran and Zimbabwe, good luck to you. But there's no public mandate
for Canada and Australia
for pulling out of the ECHR. Put it to the vote then. The public are content to stay in the ECHR.
I would put it to you, Peter, if we had a referendum in this country where we said, in order to better control your borders and deport Pakistani paedophiles and Jamaican drug dealers and Nigerian sex offenders, we need to leave the European Convention on Human Rights, which is used by criminals and illegal migrants and activist lawyers, Articles 3 and 8 of the ECHR, to keep those people in our country, around our families, around our children. I would put it to you that 90% of Brits in this country would say, yeah, let's get out of this ECHR and let's control our own borders. What you're doing, the Labour Party are doing, is you're just giving people gimmicks, one gimmick after another, while saying you're going to control the borders. This isn't going to control the borders, Peter. This is one in, one out. It's an exchange programme for illegal migrants.
I think you're interviewing yourself again. And obviously I'm a supporter of the Labour Party, but I'm not a spokesman on it. And it goes back to your point earlier. I haven't signed any deals with anyone, but I think this deal is much better than doing nothing. And going back to your other point, there is no majority in the United Kingdom for pulling out of the ECHR. So you're completely entitled to advocate that, but you're in a minority. Most people think you're wrong, and I'm afraid.
Well, listen, one of my hats is as a pollster, and I know that you're talking nonsense on that one. The large majority of British people want to reduce migration. They want to control the borders.
Do you have a poll to quote?
Sure. Well, let's take Keir Starmer's Island of Strangers speech as an example, where he said immigration is basically out of control. There's lots of polling on the ECHR. I've done polling myself showing that over half of Brits, more than half the country, would support exiting the ECHR if it meant we had better control of our borders. The reason... Here's my issue. We're now going to have another year of this crisis getting worse and the opportunities being wasted. And what I'm worried about, Peter, is the people out there who are paying billions of pounds, they're giving up on the system. They are distrustful of Westminster. They're distrustful of politicians because they're being sold one gimmick after another, whether it is under the Tories, whether it's under the Labour Party. My frustration is rooted in the fact that nobody in Westminster seems willing to deal with the underlying root cause, which is we don't control our own borders because we don't control our own laws. We need to get back to being a sovereign nation. We need to leave the ECHR, reform Tony Blair's Human Rights Act, strip back the amount of welfare we offer to people who break our laws, and have a third country processing centre outside of Britain. Peter, if you met me halfway on that, if we said, let's actually start to change the fundamentals of this crisis, I'd put it to you, our nation would be a lot stronger as a result of it.
Well, Matt, I'll say what I think the Labour Party are too diplomatic to say, that it's not just that Rwanda was a gimmick. The Rwanda scheme was a stain upon the conscience of Britain. And I say that because I've been to Rwanda. Rwanda is recovering from a genocide. It's a war-torn country with enormous doubts about freedom and democracy under President Kagame. It is a grieving nation, and it was more than just a gimmick. It was more than improper. It was immoral for Britain under the Tories to sign a deal with Rwanda. It was wrong and it was wicked.
Peter Edwards, as I say, I'm the last person in Westminster to defend a Tory record on immigration, but I, as always, appreciate your willingness to debate these issues, and we thank you for your time tonight. Now, coming up, we're going to look at what is going on with Angela Rayner, because she's backed down on secretive plans for a new Islamophobia definition after pressure from free speech campaigners. And look, I've said this before, I'm going to say it again. I think this Islamophobia law is one of the most sinister things to emerge in British politics for a long time. We're going to be debating it in just 2 minutes.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Vegetarians now have a greater desire to wield power more than their meat-eating counterparts. I mean, you like a sausage, shouldn't you, Biggins?
I like a sausage, but I have gone off meat per se, funnily enough, as I'm getting older. I think there are, you know, it takes a lot of eating a piece of meat, if you pardon the expression.
And the older you get, the more you find that it takes a lot of eating.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I must admit, I have more of a conscience about eating meat as I get older.
Yeah.
And that's a fondness of animals brings that. And if you ever go on Instagram and you look at cows and horses and pigs,
they're wonderful.
They're all affectionate and
know,
incredible.
Gorgeous.
Yeah.
And there we are, putting it into our mouths and eating it.
What do you think about the move to enforce vegetarianism on people, though? Because especially in schools and some universities, there's this trend for Meat-Free Monday, where there's this enforced absence of meat on children.
I think it's ridiculous. Let kids do what they want, to be honest with. Within reason, obviously, a healthy diet, da-da-da-da-da. But no, I think, you know, I don't eat meat, the husband eats meat. It's not an issue. Eat what you want. But I think the fact that they're trying to force this into schools, look, let kids experiment, give them a vegetarian option.
Yes,
let them
all
see
schools do that.
Just options.
It has just become political, and also there's a lot of misinformation out there. So I know children are often told that eating meat is terrible for the environment, but importing avocados thousands of miles is also terrible for the environment.
But also, I mean, a lot of vegetarian meals, certainly processed vegetarian meals, have got a load of salt and fat and sugar in them, so they're actually worse for you than eating a lean piece of meat.
I think the tide is turning now, because the new trend amongst young people, particularly young men, is protein. Chicken, breasts, tuna. That's the new trend, to get as much protein in them as possible. It's very difficult to do when you're vegetarian.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Friday Night with me, Matt Goodwin. Now, Angela Rayner has backed down on secretive plans for a new Islamophobia definition after pressure from free speech campaigners, but they have warned that the battle is still not over yet. This is because the Deputy Prime Minister has expanded and extended a public consultation over the proposals, chaired by former Tory Attorney General Dominic Grieve. The Free Speech Union, who are leading this opposition to the Islamophobia definition, wrote to Angela Rayner expressing concern that it could be so expansive that it would threaten free speech, acting as a de facto blasphemy law to stifle legitimate criticism of Islam. Now, I've written about this issue many times over the last year, and I've also been warning about this definition. So to debate this issue is political commentator Fahima, a friend of the channel, a friend of the show. We've had you on before. Fahima, critics of this definition are saying, actually, this is a backdoor for a major threat to free speech and free expression in this country. What's your instinctive reaction to that?
I don't think it's about banning criticism of Islam. We all do, even amongst ourselves as Muslims. It's about protecting British Muslims from real rising hate And you can criticize the religion, that's your right. It's just targeting Muslims as a group, painting them all as extremists or criminals. That's not debate, that's discrimination. And people say the law already protects Muslims, but if it was working, we wouldn't see a rise in anti-Muslim crimes.
So can I just ask you, because the original version of this definition of Islamophobia, which actually, interestingly, Dominic Grieve signed off on in 2018, included a number of things that people find troubling. For example, it said discussing the grooming gangs, the rape gangs, was an example of Islamophobia. So had we had the debate that we've had in this country since January, I imagine there would have been lots of people saying, if we'd had that definition entrenched in the public institutions, they'd be saying, well, that's Islamophobic. What do you think about that?
Look, the grooming gang scandal is absolutely horrific. And the problem was never that the people investigated were grooming gangs. That it's the same choice not to, and out of fear, that failure of leadership was the problem and the reason to reject a definition that targets hate. We need to understand that if we are actually also naming these criminals, we need to name and shame the act. When it comes to other criminal activities, we never say a white, English, Christian man when it comes to it. It's only when it comes to... But
is that not because many of the perpetrators within the Pakistani Muslim rape gangs were specifically citing verses from the Quran and saying that they'd attacked white working-class women because they were non-Muslim? Now, we might say they are following a very warped interpretation of Islam, OK? We might say that that was a misrepresentation, but it is also true that many of those perpetrators specifically saw their abuse as being legitimised by their reading of Islam. So that's why people get nervous about this definition. Let me give you another example. The 2018 definition said talking about so-called Muslim entryism into political institutions was also Islamophobic. Well, what if I want to do a show? What if I want to focus this show on a campaign group like Muslim Votes, which is organising British Muslims to vote along religious lines, along sectarian lines, being more interested in issues like Gaza or campaigning for an airport in Pakistan than what's going on here in Britain? If I have a show dedicated to that kind of entryism, am I an Islamophobic person for doing that?
No, you're not. And I think you're actually also generalizing the fact that if you are going to speak about something like that, then you will be called Islamophobic. You can discuss...
But that was in the original report, Fahima. That is what Dominic Grieve signed off on.
No. That's why we wanted to open this up to the public, not on people that don't understand what it actually means to have that hate against Muslims as an entire group. Islam is a faith that has many schools of thought that even we cannot even say, even if it's going to be blasphemous or not, because for once you have Iran with their own Sharia law, for example.
Yeah, no, I understand the variations. But can I just ask then, you say you opened it up. Why was it only opened up to everybody else after pressure? Why was it kept secret until the likes of the Free Speech Union and free speech campaigners actually forced the working group to open itself up to the country?
Well, if I was an MP for the Labour Party, maybe I can answer that question. But obviously it shows that there was pressure to open it up because of the Muslim community as well that needed to have some sort of say to make this fair and not have the accusation, like as if to say that everyday Muslims actually want this definition, nor do we want it in a way where it actually takes away free speech or any criticism.
Well, absolutely, because, you know, we still got a school teacher in this country in hiding because he happened to offend local Muslims. Nobody in the Labour Party seems to want to talk about that particular case. Let me just give you one other example briefly as we come to the end. The other thing that definition in 2018 said is talking about the demographic takeover of countries by Islam was Islamophobic. So if I said to you, for example, projections in the UK show that by the end of this century, about 1 in 4 people will be following Islam, if we did a show on that, would that be considered to be Islamophobic?
It depends on the context and how you're saying it and certain language.
If I said it was deeply worrying for our national culture and our way of life, would that be Islamophobic?
And if it's just saying fact, then yeah, that's not Islamophobic. That's just raising a fact to a certain extent.
And if I said it was potentially negative because of our history of common law and independent judiciary, respect for women's rights, if I said that, would I be Islamophobic?
No, you won't be Islamophobic, but it will raise concerns as to why you're only picking on one particular group and why you're only categorizing one particular place, where most people on the far right and extremists will actually jump on the bandwagon and actually call this as if it's hate.
I appreciate that. I appreciate you giving up your time to join the show tonight, as always. You're always up for the debate, and we appreciate that. Let's get the thoughts of my panel now. Assistant Comment Editor at The Telegraph, Poppy Coburn, and trade unionist Andy Twells. Poppy, how concerned should we be about this definition?
I mean, intensely. I can't think of something that's more inflammatory at a time when half the country is calling the Prime Minister two-tier Keir to introduce yet more speech restrictions. I mean, the problem with this definition of Islamophobia, it isn't just we can get in the minutiae and say you can't say this, you can't say that. It's that we're even having one in the first place. I mean, this is ridiculous. We're a liberal country. If we cannot insult each other, you know, in our national culture, this is ridiculous. This is not our way of life. And I think it reflects a sort of fear on behalf of politicians. They want to constantly control what the population is saying, rather than actually own up to the consequences of their bad policies.
Yeah. Andy Twells, it was interesting there when I made the point that talking about the demographic takeover, if you like, of Western societies by Islam, Fahima there seemed to be saying towards the end, well, if you frame it in a negative way, then actually there will be concerns raised. Now, that makes me instinctively very nervous about this, because I do want to talk about what Islam means for our common law tradition, for our independent legal system, for women's rights, you know, for the rights of people not to follow a religion like Islam.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it does depend in the context that you frame it. I think, like anything, I think if you are discriminating against someone because they're Muslim or you perceive them to follow Islam, I think that is Islamophobia. I think it is okay for people to have a definition of Islamophobia, just like it's okay to have a definition of anti-Semitism or any other, discriminatory practice against any other religion. I don't think it's a kind of a handcuff on our liberal democracy. I think it is okay for the government to be consulting on this. Just as if they were updating the anti-Semitism definition, I would sit here and go, that's okay. I don't think it is that deep that they are kind of defining what Islamophobia is.
Poppy?
I mean, I'm personally a bit more of a free speech absolutist. I think whenever the government actually tries to get involved in regulating speech between free British people, then it always backfires. Maybe you can make an argument in our history that we have had laws against insulting religions. We used to burn people as heretics. Yeah. I'm not really sure that's a tradition that we should be keeping, though, in the modern age. I'd like to think we're all adult enough and enlightened enough to understand that hate is one thing, but it shouldn't be criminal. If it crosses the threshold of criminality, if it's a threat against something, well, guess what? We already have laws against that, so sorted.
And what about the more informal chilling effects that this is going to have on free speech, Andy? I mean, I use the example of the rape gangs, but the original definition signed off by Wes Streeting, Anna Soubry, Dominic Grieve, I mean, these are not people that I would consider to be defenders of free speech. I mean, Anna Soubry and Dominic Grieve spent much of the post-Brexit period trying to overturn a democratic vote to leave the European Union, and now they're suddenly saying, well, we respect free speech. So that's a concern. But also this kind of underlying point that the rape gang debate, if we've been out there saying this is a problem within Pakistani Muslim communities with clan-based networks that have been transplanted in from Pakistan, they've used their interpretation of Islamic theology to justify that, we'd have all been called Islamophobes.
I mean, it does depend how you do it. I think it is genuinely people who are in grooming gangs and you call them out for it, that's fair game.
But not under this definition. Under this definition, I would have been called an Islamophobe, and probably there would have been court cases.
If you go every Pakistani Muslim immigrant in this country is part of a grooming gang, if you say that, if you paint it with that kind of broad brush, then you are in the wrong. I do think that is wrong, and it is Islamophobic. I don't think that is fair game, almost. Just because there are some trends within a specific sector of people, you go, well, everyone's like that. I think that is racist and wrong.
I think ultimately it boils down, though, to do you trust the people who currently run Britain to handle something as sensitive as free speech on controversial issues?
I mean, no country has ever had free speech.
I mean, America has the First Amendment.
I mean, America, what McCarthyism, they used to imprison people for having the wrong opinion.
Well, wrong opinion, no, they used to imprison people
you couldn't express, support for Marxist socialism, for example, in the US. That's not free speech. That's not free speech absolutism at all.
Well, we also have people in this country, let's not forget, who are currently in prison for sharing unfashionable views. And yes, of course, I'm talking about Lucy Connolly, among others. Well, after the break, we're going to be talking about Britain's economy because it has just become even weaker. It just shrank by another 0.1%. It's bad news for Rachel Reeves. It's bad news for the Labour government. It's bad news for all of us. We're talking about it in 2 minutes. See you then.
Can't wait to get in that sea.
Lovely and warm.
Just like the feeling of having great travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
Whilst the UK will experience Mediterranean-like temperatures on Saturday, it's not going to be quite as hot through the Mediterranean as it has been recently. For the Canaries and for Madeira, fairly typical conditions for the time of year. Breezy, partly cloudy, otherwise fine. But we've got this area of thunderstorms developing across northern Spain, the Pyrenees, Andorra, southern France. They could be quite lively. And for Italy, for Greece, sunny spells. Not quite as hot, but it is going to heat up into next week.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
Hello again and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. It's going to be a very warm night out there. Clear skies for most, but temperatures in many places not dropping below the high teens or even low 20s. And with high pressure in charge, we're going to see plenty of sunshine as we start the weekend and even hotter weather to come. Now, we do have an area of low cloud and mist around the North Sea. That's going to just creep inland in some parts of eastern Scotland and eastern England overnight. Otherwise, it's clear skies and temperatures not falling far. 17, 18 Celsius typically, but in some spots, particularly, say, western Scotland, temperatures won't fall below 20 Celsius. So an uncomfortable night for sleeping. And a misty start to the day for eastern parts of Scotland with some low cloud around first thing. But elsewhere across Scotland, it's sunshine from the word go, temperatures rising quickly through the morning. Likewise for Northern Ireland, barely a cloud in the sky. Wales, Western England, seeing plenty of strong sunshine right the way through the morning with those temperatures increasing rapidly. But along that east coast, we do have that low cloud in places. That's going to limit the temperature rise a bit more during the morning. It will tend to become more restricted to the far east coast around the beaches by the afternoon. But here it's going to be cooler because of this breeze from the North Sea. So not as hot across East Anglia and the southeast compared with the last few heat waves, but inland and widely across central and western England, Wales, parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland, temperatures reaching or exceeding 30 Celsius. Top temperature 34 degrees somewhere in the West Midlands. Now, Sunday is also going to be a hot day, but a couple of differences. A bit more cloud in the sky, chance of an odd shower later, temperatures a couple of degrees down on Saturdays. Then a real change takes place into the start of next week, showery and much cooler.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Welcome back to Friday Night with me, Matt Goodwin. Now, the Bank of England is almost certain to cut interest rates in August after Britain's economy has just shrunk by another 0.1% last month. Where is that growth that the Labour government promised us, you might be wondering? I'm certainly wondering that too. Economists have warned that the government's U-turn on welfare cuts had eroded the Chancellor's ability to respond to future shocks. Quite an ominous statement there. Rachel Reeves said that the figures were disappointing, but what did Number 10 blame them on? Well, you guessed it, that two-word slogan they're now rolling out whenever something goes wrong. Global instability, that's right. Nothing to do with the Labour government, it's all about global instability. And if that picture wasn't bleak enough, Britain's heat wave is now apparently costing the UK economy a whopping £1.2 billion a year. Well, to discuss this and more, I'm joined by economics expert Justin Urquhart-Stewart, who joins us now down the line. Justin, thank you for joining us. Just looking at the economy here, obviously the lights are flashing red. It looks like UK PLC is in the toilet. No growth, massive amounts of debt, highest tax burden since 1948, highest energy prices, I think I'm right in saying, in the Western world. Nobody seems to know how on earth you're going to turn this Titanic round. What on earth is coming next, Justin?
Well, unfortunately, as you perfectly described it there, you're an economy which is weaker and getting weaker, and that actually makes life more difficult for the Chancellor. And so dear Rachel from Accounts seems somewhat out of her depth here, because what they're not really looking at are the levers you can pull to actually try and get the economy moving without a great deal of money. For example, there's one word that runs an economy: confidence. And it's a key driver in our economy: small businesses. You need to give those people, boys and girls setting up their businesses, which takes a big risk and a real certain amount of bravery. And I've done it myself. You actually get the house goes with it as well. It's a big risk. So give people enterprise investment schemes, broaden that out, make that regional. The government doesn't have to pay anything for it until the businesses go bust. Some will, most actually probably won't. But of course, when they're doing that, they're operating, they're spending money, they're employing people, they're spending money. The government actually earns more money from that.
It's a great idea, but Labour, of course, did the opposite. They piled on national insurance tax rises on small, medium businesses, made it harder to increase people's wages, made it harder for the economy to be productive. I think this is all going to end up in some kind of IMF-style intervention in the UK economy. I think the cost of debt is so high, the room for manoeuvre in number 10 is now so small. Rachel Reeves has got nowhere to go, number 11, I should say. I mean, am I overblowing things, or is a fiscal event, a crisis of that magnitude, actually now on the agenda?
I have a very wise wife who actually at the election last year, the first thing she said after the election was, how long do you think it's going to be before they phone up the IMF? We sort of smiled at that time. But here we are. You should be actually lining up and making sure the Bank of England and the IMF are in a position where they may need to provide us with some support. We're not there yet, but what you are going to be seeing is it is now inevitable. And we discussed on GB News a lot, well, are tax rises coming? Well, as we've seen the economy under more pressure, the answer is yes. And because of the U-turn that we've seen, so be prepared. What's it going to go on? Well, the simplest way to hit, of course, it goes against what they're saying, will be actually income tax. It's simple and it's broadly spread. I suspect, Justin, you are right. Tax rises are on the way. Justin Urquhart-Stewart, thank you for joining us tonight. Let's get the thoughts of my panel: assistant comment editor at The Telegraph, Poppy Coburn, and trade unionist Andy Twells. Poppy, UK PLC isn't just about this lack of growth, is it? We've got 16,500 millionaires, I think, left in the last 12 months, more than any other advanced nation. As Justin was saying, their business confidence is through the floor. An IMF-style intervention looks actually increasingly plausible. There's no serious growth strategy. Where does this leave Rachel Reeves? I mean, she's gone, isn't she?
I mean, it's a good thing that costs aren't rising. Oh, wait, they are. They're massively rising. I mean, there's no surprise that the Chancellor looked like she was close to tears last week, because I think I would be too. This is a horrible situation to have to deal with. If you look at per capita growth, by the way, because that's actually the statistic we should be looking at, because a lot of immigration has helped smooth over the figures, we've basically been in a recession since 2018, OK? There's been no real growth in the country for a very, very long time. That's because no politician is actually brave enough to say, let's do the things that are required for growth. We've had wages that have remained stagnant in real terms since 2007. We've had a housing crisis that nobody has the bravery to actually do anything about. We make it almost impossible for businesses to grow. And when they do grow, we go, thanks, that's more tax money. We're just going to cut you down quickly and not let you go any further. You know, this kind of thinking, we cannot afford it any longer. And you're right, you know, this IMF bailout style situation, if you said this a couple of years ago, someone would have laughed at you. Now I don't think anyone's laughing.
Andy, no one's laughing. The UK PLC is in the toilet.
I'm going to shock the viewers and say I actually agree with Poppy. I think she's absolutely correct with her kind of diagnosis of the UK. I think, you know, when we talk about growth has been this buzzword for the last couple of years, both in the Tories, Reform and Labour. Across Westminster, it's become this buzzword. But what does growth mean if there's no dignity in growth? If wages aren't going up, if bills aren't coming down,
well, if Labour
people are not going to have good jobs.
If Labour were here, I'm going to stick up for Rachel Reeves, which is something I've never said before in my life. But they would say it takes time. It takes time for these.
Takes time. I think, you know, it takes, a year, 18 months for the last government's kind of economic direction to change. I think, you know, we are bordering on that year, 18-month period now where that won't be an excuse for much longer. But I think, you know, there is no point in growing the economy or shrinking the economy if it doesn't matter to people. People don't care if GDP is going up. They don't feel that effect. They only feel the effect if it is tangible, if wages are going to increase, if costs are going to go down, if there's decent housing supply in this country, if there are, good jobs for their kids, if there's services that work for them, if, their roads don't have potholes, all these things. Growth does not matter if there is not dignity and if there is not good growth. And I don't think number 10 gets that.
Well, there's certainly not much growth going around at the moment, is there? Those big taxes coming down the line, those big tax rises, I don't know where that's going to leave ordinary people in this country, given how hard things are right now. Well, let's keep watching that. Up next, it's time for Matt in Conversation, the new segment where I'm going to be speaking to somebody interesting every week. And tonight, it is a top Republican strategist who's going to give us the inside skinny on how Trump 2 is going and what on earth is coming next in America and whether we can steal some of those ideas for fixing Britain. See you in 2 minutes.
The 12th, a day to celebrate history, community and family here in Northern Ireland. Join me, Arlene Foster.
And me, Dougie Beattie, as we bring you live coverage of the July 12th celebrations.
Right across the United Kingdom. It's all happening here on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because
the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes and Co weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Okoye, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, you didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Friday Night with me, Matt Goodwin. Now it's time for something new, a new segment, Matt in Conversation. Every week I'm going to be having a free-flowing and very candid conversation with an industry expert, with somebody that I think is particularly insightful, that can perhaps offer us something that we wouldn't get anywhere else. Well, this evening, The Telegraph are reporting that President Trump will not be given the honour of addressing Parliament during the state visit, as Emmanuel Macron was, of course, given that honour this week. The US president's trip is set to be deliberately scheduled for mid-September during a parliamentary recess, handing the government an excuse for not offering the speech. And earlier in the show, we were also discussing the UK's broken borders and how to secure them. And if there's one government in the world that's proven that borders can be closed and fixed, it's the Trump administration. So this week, I wanted to talk to somebody who can really give us the inside skinny on Trump 2 and what's been going on in America, and that's Republican strategist Matthew Hurt. Matthew, thank you for joining us this evening. I really appreciate your time. So let's just start off. Trump 2, how is it going?
You know, on immigration, on taxes and the economy, Trump is wildly popular in the United States. We just passed the big, beautiful bill. It's now the big, beautiful law. There are no taxes on tipped income, so service industry, great for the working class. There are no taxes on retirees, so that's great for grandmas and grandpas across the country. And there are no taxes on some other segments of the population as well. It's great for the working class in America.
So just to be clear, as our Labour government, a party that claims to speak up for the working class, is giving us the highest tax burden in this country since 1948, actually raising taxes on small businesses, Trump is taking taxes off people who are working in the service sector, right? He's taking taxes off working class people.
Conservatives and Republicans in the United States understand and have for a long time that lowering taxes, particularly on the working class, is what stimulates the economy. These are the individuals who go out to the grocery store, want to pay their mortgage and want to save for retirement and provide for their children. And this is going to unleash the American economy.
The other thing is the border crossings are down. I was looking at the numbers this afternoon ahead of the show. I think the number of illegal crossings into America from Mexico are down about 90% since Trump came back into office, which is pretty impressive for 7 months on. What's behind that? What do you think has changed that's enabled Trump to do that? Because there's a lot of folks here, you know, myself included, you know, my head is in my hands most days looking at, we have an open border policy here. Basically, anybody can come into the country illegally, and all they need to do is get in a dinghy and cross the channel. What's Trump doing that has really brought about such a dramatic change in those border crossings?
Well, under the previous administration, the Biden administration, the United States was seen as a magnet for immigrants from all over the world, particularly illegal immigration. So the Trump administration on day one, through Tom Homan, the border czar, has closed the border. Those crossings are down. And in addition to that, he's using immigration and customs enforcement to go in and deport criminal illegal aliens, people who've committed heinous crimes in the United States, and sending them back to their country.
So do you actually think basically President Trump is mainstreaming the idea of deportations, basically? Because there's a lot of people in British politics who would say, well, to discuss deporting illegal migrants is controversial and you shouldn't say it. Now, that's not my view. My view is if you're here illegally, we've got 1.2 million people we think who are in the UK illegally. We've got about 500,000 in London who are here illegally. They should be removed from the country. Westminster holds its hands up and says, oh, it's too difficult, we can't do that. But actually what you're saying is the lesson of the Trump administration 7 months in is, yeah, actually, you could have a viable deportation strategy.
Well, the deep irony in American politics is that former Democrat President Bill Clinton deported illegal aliens. Former Democratic President Barack Obama deported illegal aliens. It's now only controversial in the States, but it is working very well right now.
And how do you think Trump would take this news that he might not get a big set speech in Parliament and that his visit is going to, some might say, conveniently collide with recess in Parliament under a Labour government? Do you think he'd take that as a personal dig?
You know, under the Starmer regime and Labour in Parliament, I think that the protest which may happen on the floor would be much more entertaining for him. But he's going to have a nice visit here. And just like me, this is my first visit to London and to the United Kingdom.
Your first ever visit?
First ever visit to London.
What do you think of London and the UK?
You know, in the United States, we see a lot of news about the crime and about immigration in London. It's very concerning. And I'm seeing pockets of that as I tour around the city this week.
Are you impressed or are you pessimistic? I'm putting you on the spot, but, you know, a lot of Americans call me up. I've got a lot of friends in Washington and elsewhere, and they say, Matt, just been to London. What on earth is going on over there?
It is shocking and rather alarming, and so it is a deep concern. We see some of this in large cities in the United States, but under a Trump administration, embracing the immigration system that he's promoted for the last 7 months, I think is helping to resolve the problem.
Well, there are some parallels with the progressive-led cities in America, and I've always resented the way in which the word progressive is used, or as a friend of mine once said, whenever you hear the only place you hear the word progressive is in a doctor's surgery, and usually it's not a good thing. But if you look at the big cities, you know, you think about what's going on in California, New York, London, under a Labour mayor, violent crime is up, shoplifting is up 54% in London, theft from the person is up 41%, rapes and sexual offences are up. This is a city that is going through a real crisis at the moment. It's interesting that a lot of Americans are picking it up. And just lastly, free speech. Americans are big on free speech. Vice President J.D. Vance is big on free speech. Even he said he's watching the free speech crisis here closely. Is that something that Americans could potentially see as actually causing a rift in the special relationship? That if the UK doesn't get its act together on free speech, Americans are going to continue to call that out?
I really think so. I think that free speech is at the heart of the American experiment, what we're doing in the United States, and it's particularly concerning on American college campuses that foment the kind of hate that we see in the culture that is dangerous to American freedom and to what freedom you have here.
Well, I have to say, there's one other question, maybe ponder it on your way home. Can you open up an asylum route for Brits fleeing Keir Starmer's regime who want to move to a low-tax, safe nation? There you are. Have a think about that. Well, tonight, Patrick Christis is coming up next tonight. Of course, tonight, though, it's hosted by Bev Turner. Bev, what is coming up on your show tonight?
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, everybody. That's right. It is a Friday night. It's been a scorching day, and it's going to be a red-hot show. Tonight, we've got a fantastic panel. We're going to be talking about the fact that Trump is not going to be allowed to speak to Parliament on a state visit. Good or bad news? Boo! You see, the audience do not like that at all. We've got pubs closing one a day, at least, in the country at the moment. Adam Brooks is on our panel. Going to talk to him about that. Meanwhile, the government is going to open, I kid you not, state-sponsored restaurants. You couldn't make it up at the moment, the state of this country. That and a whole lot more after your weather.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello again and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. It's going to be a very warm night out there. Clear skies for most, but temperatures in many places not dropping below the high teens or even low 20s. And with high pressure in charge, we're going to see plenty of sunshine as we start the weekend and even hotter weather to come. Now, we do have an area of low cloud and mist around the North Sea. That's going to just creep inland in some parts of eastern Scotland and eastern England overnight. Otherwise, it's clear skies and temperatures not falling far. 17, 18 Celsius typically, but in some spots, particularly, say, western Scotland, temperatures won't fall below 20 Celsius. So an uncomfortable night for sleeping. And a misty start to the day for eastern parts of Scotland with some low cloud around first thing. But elsewhere across Scotland, it's sunshine from the word go, temperatures rising quickly through the morning. Likewise for Northern Ireland, barely a cloud in the sky. Wales, Western England, seeing plenty of strong sunshine right the way through the morning with those temperatures increasing rapidly. But along that east coast, we do have that low cloud in places. That's going to limit the temperature rise a bit more during the morning. It will tend to become more restricted to the far east coast around the beaches by the afternoon. But here it's going to be cool.